YouTube because I didn't click the button. So we are live on Facebook, and now we are live on YouTube, and now you are seeing me. So you guys are going to have to go and watch back who is our guest today. Let me just redo this. So Heather Campbell, our legal website warrior. Sometimes you have too many places.
I totally understand.
I know. She, let's get you, hold on a second. There we go. So Heather, my friend, I'm going to put you on stage for a second. You're going to say hi, and then I'm going to talk about you some more. Hi, Heather.
Excellent. Hello.
You know, I was telling a friend of mine that looking at you and looking at your videos and looking at your pictures, I'm like, she is so sweet. You know, if I saw her in, you know, like protecting one of the people that I go to court with, I'll be like, aw, she's so cute. And then my friend was like, yes. And then she takes out the wand and goes like, and protects the wand.
That's right. It's a trick. It's a total trick.
Yeah. So Heather is, she is a lawyer, right? And she provides legal support to industry leaders, world-renowned entrepreneurs. She's equally committed to breaking the traditional black box legal model, making essential legal education and support available to entrepreneurs of all levels and businesses. And you know what's interesting about that, Heather, is that, yeah, when someone just starting out, they think the last thing they should do is look at their legal documents, right? Because I'm just starting out. This is not, you know, nobody's going to sue me right now or anything like that. But, you know, I've been listening to podcasts that you were on, and that is the biggest mistake someone can make, right? So let's dive into that for a second.
Perfect. It's a great place to start, because where do people want to focus their energy, right? And you're absolutely right. Like when somebody's launching their business online or just getting started, they're usually focusing on what's fun, and what's fun is marketing and perfecting their website, right? And like getting all of the visuals and the pretty stuff looking nice so that, you know, they feel like they look legitimate. And yet, one of the most important things they can do before they even get to that step, and I've said it before, but I'll reiterate it here. I joke regularly that the online world of business is like the Wild West of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
People often just, you know, it's what you said in some of your introductory language about this show. They don't know what they don't know when it comes to legal. And that's the pitfall, right? So it's...
You know, and one of the ways that people find out about what's going on is just asking their friends. And only when you see your friend get in trouble, you go like, oh, maybe I should look into that, right?
That's right. It's it's both good and bad, right? So it's good that we learn from other people's mistakes. Those stories tend to stick, right? If you see something in the headlines, right? How many people have asked me about that McDonald's case where the woman burned her leg with a really hot coffee, right?
Yeah.
Right? So interesting legal stories that end up in the headlines, or like people getting copyright damages over some, you know, what is perceived to be a relatively minor thing stolen, you know, an image or something used from somebody else online. And so, yes, people luckily learn from stories of others, and there are still so many ways that they can learn the hard way themselves. So I don't want that.
I know, and that's a biggie, because, like we said, you don't know what you don't know. So, guys, before we move on a little bit and actually help you know what you don't know, right below, you see a comment like, what's the biggest legal debacle that you've been through or that you're afraid of being through? Just put that in the comment. Let us know if there's something that you kind of like, oh, you know, I've heard this is possible, or I've been through a bad case. Someone, you know, said something about me, and you know, I'm afraid that this is going to happen, and we can answer those things right now online, live, or you can join us and ask the same questions.
That's right.
So what are the 3 big legal mistakes that entrepreneurs and business owners are committing today?
Absolutely. So this is a great, this is a great place to start, because these are things that are actually relatively easy to tackle. You just have to know what they are, right?
Yeah.
So the first one, and part of it is everybody faces this on their business journey, but it's one of the biggest areas of concern, and it's one of the biggest problems that when it does arise, consumes people's time, their emotional energy, sometimes their financial resources, depending on how things go. So this one I like to start with, but failing to spot what I call red flag clients and having contracts in place that protect against those types of people, right? So red flag clients, there's a range that fall into this group. Usually you can see them coming. I don't know what comes to mind for you when I say red flag clients.
What comes to mind is the first mistakes that I was making, where it's like, I will just help everyone, regardless of how badly, and the other one is like, when you start working with a client and you commit to something, to doing for them, and then as you get into the work, you realize they lied to you. And now you don't know, should I, we signed a contract, should I back out? Like, what should I do? Do I see through? Like, what'd you say?
Yeah, absolutely. So that actually, you raise a great point, that wanting to serve everyone is often one of the motivators or the reasons that people will take red flag clients, rather than having some criteria in place that says, here's who I serve, here's who I don't serve, and knowing specifically, you raise a great point, that wanting to serve everyone. Red flag clients for me, and just through experience of working with a lot of people in business, typically give several signs at the beginning of the potential journey, right, with a business. And usually it's asking for special consideration.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Asking for more than what other people receive, or outlining, quote unquote, special circumstances that should opt them out of, this payment requirement, and they should get special payment plan just for that, So it's a lot of, it can feel like, and often red flag clients, whether intentionally or unintentionally, they'll pose a whole bunch of questions at the beginning of the journey. And a certain amount of questions are good. Red flag clients tend to have like an overboard, like they have a larger number of questions because they just want to come across as very like interested and curious, even though they're actually signaling to you with some of those questions that they're going to be a problem later down the client journey.
So when you say, pay attention to special circumstances, is that also like, hey, I want a discount? Like if someone says, can you reduce your fee? Is that like a big red sign?
Excellent question, because that's really interesting. That particular question can depend on a variety of factors, including cultural, right? And concepts that each of us have around our money rules. So yes and no. Sometimes red flag clients will ask that question, expect a discount or special consideration. Sometimes a regular person who could be a great client will also ask that question, because either culturally or from a standpoint of like, well, this is just what a good business person does. If I don't ask for a discount, maybe I would have gotten one, right? Maybe I should just ask to find out. And even if you say no, they're still going to work with you. So you have to understand your own money rules in response to those questions. But red flag clients will push you on that. So they'll ask for the discount, and then they'll explain why they deserve it. And even if you say no, they might say, well, I need to think about this, but really the only way I can work with you is if it's under these circumstances. They tend to push harder.
So what would you say to someone just starting out, right? And they really need the money and they really need the clients, and they're going like, well, would you say like, okay, trust your gut and just don't take that client, wait for a better one? Or would you say like, well, maybe you can put something in writing that will protect you from that red flag client?
That is also a great question. Absolutely trust your gut. And the number of times I've heard people say, if I'd only trusted my gut, right? Their brain talks them into, well, I really want to do this work. I think this could be a good client for me because they seem like a right fit, except for this thing that made me a little uncomfortable, So yes, absolutely trust your gut. No, I would not rely on contracts to protect you from all of the types of issues that red flag clients bring, but contracts can protect you in some ways against certain of the issues, right? I can never say that like contracts will protect you against everything, but certainly they are a powerful tool so that if you accidentally end up in business with a red flag client, you've got some ways to both manage the relationship and control your options for getting out.
So this is fascinating because I actually did not expect you to say you would not trust contracts. That is amazing coming from a lawyer. And I appreciate that so much because I did rely on contract, and I had a client who breached the contract, and now we're in a legal battle, right? And I thought, you have a contract, that's all you need.
Yeah, it's, you know, you're having the experience that so many people have in business. And really, business is a numbers game. It's pretty inevitable that you end up in a tough experience with a client, right? I had one on Monday, and I'm pretty good at filtering clients. So, yeah, it's pretty inevitable. And contracts are definitely an essential part of managing those relationships. But I need it to be really clear that contracts cannot protect you against everything, right?
Yeah.
They have to be 1,000 pages long. So, and already they're too long in some instances, right?
Yeah.
So, but the mistake that people make is often letting the desire that they have to do the work and get started and be busy and make money override their internal judgments and trusting themselves about, you know, maybe I really shouldn't work with this person. And I would submit that you will grow your business faster and have more alignment when it comes to your clients if you pay heavy attention to that and really pay attention to what works for you and what doesn't work on the client side, because you're more likely to get clarity faster about the clients that you should be working with. Yeah. And that serves your marketing message, your sales language, right? Everything that you use to continue to build your business.
Totally. So before we jump to, so this is number one, red flag clients. And I want to say hi to Michael Hoffman, who joined us, and Nathan is here, and Lauren. Hi, Lauren. And Chad, nice to have you guys. I would love for you to jump in and actually chat with us. So over to imthatgeek.com/live, jump into there and let's have a conversation. So number one, red flag clients. And I know especially for women, it's very difficult, right? Because we are so nurturing and we want to help everybody and we kind of like, oh, maybe it doesn't feel right, but you know, I could or something, right? So do you find like in your clientele that women have a bigger challenge with it than men do?
For the most part, yes. Men just simply have an easier time saying no, right? Yeah. And that's, I think, both related to just natural gender differences and cultural differences related to gender, right? It's more acceptable for men to say no. Yeah. I don't have time, or I'm going to refer you elsewhere, or this just isn't a great fit, right? Women definitely, I think you're spot on, have a harder time doing that. And yet women are more likely to actually recognize when something is going wrong, right? So it's almost like we have an improved ability when we do pay attention to it. And I think that's just the point, is women are more likely to pay attention to those instincts, but are also more likely to dismiss them.
I love it. So women, we just need to learn some business skills, right? Not become very masculine, but just learn how to say no, and it will be fantastic in all areas of our lives.
Totally.
Right? Totally. So, number one, red flag client. Number two, what is the second biggest mistake?
Yeah, so that one we touched on at the beginning. You mentioned it, right? People launching their online business and their online content without understanding what it really takes to protect their intellectual property.
Wow. Yes. So, and you know what? This is so interesting because we are so used, all of us, to copy and paste.
We will talk about copy and paste. Oh my goodness.
I mean, like, come on, it's just, it's on the internet. What's the problem? It's there. I'm like, this is, because you know what? I think it comes from school and college. Like, this is how we do research, right? You go, you research, you read article, you copy paste, and you turn it into your dissertation.
Yeah. Oh my heavens. And boy, does that get people in trouble, right? Hopefully, at least if you had adequate education around, plagiarism, you knew enough to know that you have to create original content, even if you're utilizing certain points or positions that are, kind of co-opted from other sources. In the online world, and copyright generally, right, we could really get into the nitty-gritty of copyright, but you do have to be careful, because the flip side of, right, this whole discussion around people stealing online content is I've also seen people say, oh, this person is totally copying me. I know that they were on my website, and I know that they took my copy and just changed a few things and made it theirs, right?
Yes.
To be very careful about that too, because it's the nature of information to evolve essentially simultaneously, even in different portions of the world and spheres of business. It's how ideas work, is that you can, and copyright, by the way, when you're talking about protecting an idea,
yeah,
you actually technically cannot protect the idea. You are protecting your unique expression of the idea.
Okay, because this is super interesting. There's nothing new under the sun, right? We always just say it in different ways, but you're right. Someone wakes up in the morning with an idea and say it, and then all of a sudden you find it everywhere. And you're like, I said it first. My biggest beef with myself is that Frank Kern is now going with intent-based marketing. And I'm like, dude, I've been talking about this for years, and you say it so much better than I do. Darn it.
I know. There's a woman locally, a friend of mine, who runs a great local business. It's, I think her tagline was like the power of she. She's been using it for years, right?
Yeah.
She's a women-focused, women-based. She does marketing research, and then she supports other businesses with that research, etc. But she's a phenomenal host of like local events and all of this. So I think it was, who's the company that owns, I think, is it Cap? I can't remember. There's a Athleta. Do you know that the women?
I don't know.
Workout store Athleta. I think it's owned by a big company, and I could be totally wrong, but like Gap or one of those big ones. Started using like either that phrase exactly or something very similar, like power to the she, like one word off. Mm-hmm. And went to obtain a federal trademark registration on that phrase, right? And she's been, if she had obtained a trademark registration on hers years ago, like they wouldn't be able to use it.
It's the same thing that happened with Keep Austin Weird. Some guy was just walking around going like, keep Austin weird, and then it caught on, and then someone trademarked it, and then...
Well, and at that point, so it's not all is lost, right? Because even the rights to use a trademark get down to first use in commerce. So somebody can file a trademark registration for a phrase or a name that you've been using. Mm-hmm. But at the point that they file, you have to then go find it, right? You have to submit information, start participating in the process, which makes it a different kind of approach than, for example, if you had filed initially. So it's okay, not all is lost, but it can be an expensive process for some people and businesses, and it's not always a clear-cut thing. But back to the issue number 2, right? Yeah. Is that people, and back to the fact that online business is the Wild West of business.
Right.
People can launch things overnight. They can throw up content and create things quickly. And so business moves very quickly. And this is both good and bad. It's good because I'm a supporter and fan of people doing business, especially when they're doing it well. But it's bad because people can really get themselves into trouble if they don't understand rules around protecting their intellectual property, or like you mentioned, even how not to step on somebody else's shoes in business with intellectual property. So there's risk both to people taking your information and you accidentally not duplicating, but if you haven't researched even your web domain or phrases that you're using in your business, like a tagline or the name of a signature course or program, and somebody else already has the rights to it, you can be on the receiving end of a lawsuit pretty quickly.
Wow, that is so rule number one, guys, no more copying and pasting.
Yeah.
Right. Rule number two, rule number two is when you come up with something, go research. Now, I actually thought that, someone said, if you have a domain or you have an idea, don't research it online, because that will alert all the search engines that you have this idea, and then it might come up in someone else's thing and they'll steal your idea and they'll do all these things. And how true is that?
And I'm not a search engine expert. I don't think that searching for an idea means that somehow it's going to get leaked to the world.
Yeah.
I guess, when you think about the way Google functions, maybe your search, your exact search parameters starts coming up as an auto-populate, but it has to be searched a lot before it's going to show up in Google's auto-populate, right? Yeah. Under that search rule. So I don't think there's anything to that. So here's one misconception I'd like to clear up for people, because I face this a lot with clients and potential clients, is they hold back the release of their idea because they think if I do expose it to the world, people can just take it. So I don't want to do that until I understand all this stuff, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Right.
You need to understand enough to keep your business safe and do things the right way, like conducting proper searches, doing all of that to make sure you're not stepping on other people's toes. But don't hold on to an idea and not release it or not publish it because you're fearful that somebody else is going to take it. That's not the reason not to release it. Because again, back to the trademark issue that we just talked about, first use in commerce is highly, highly relevant to whether or not you have the rights to that phrase or business name or tagline.
Interesting. So we have a question from Melanie. Melanie, why don't you jump in and we can actually dive into that because it's very important. Melanie is asking, I'd like to know if having my clients agree to terms versus getting an e-signature is good in the US.
Great question, Melanie. So this is an important thing to understand because there is legal precedent in the US on this issue. When you're talking about terms and conditions, you have a couple different kinds, right? You have what are called browse wrap. Mm-hmm. That's at the bottom of a website, right? You've got a link that says terms and conditions, right. Privacy policy, right? Somebody has to click there, browse it. It's called a browse wrap agreement. Those are generally not 100% enforceable. They're usually found to be, and there's differing case law, so it's not all exactly the same, but those are far less secure from a legal standpoint than what is called a click wrap. And a click wrap, I think everybody knows what this is once I describe it, right? The iTunes style agreement where you actually have the box and you have to actively click before you can purchase, saying I have read and agree to, right, these terms and conditions or these terms of purchase. Even better than that, so that's a click wrap. You have to click and then you have access to the terms and you literally cannot complete the purchase without acknowledging the terms. Better than that is the scroll box, right? So the scroll box that pops up.
They have to scroll to the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, and you actually have to scroll through and get all the way to the bottom before you can acknowledge it. That's the most secure from a legal standpoint. When I coach my clients, I take it one step further, right? And I outline those two options. And then I also encourage everybody upon purchase. So once your client makes it through the checkout system, your online funnel, the introductory email that says, congrats on your purchase. Here's what you should know, or here's how to get started, right? ABC.
Yeah.
The bottom of that, you say, by the way, if you need them, or as a reminder, here are the terms of purchase that apply, so that they can go back at any point and access the refund policy or, any of the terms regarding use of the IP. So for example, do they get to download a copy or do they just get to access it through the membership site, right? All of that stuff should appropriately be covered in your terms. So that's the best way But the e-signature is also, right, you cannot get around traditional rules of contracts. That's a totally 100% acceptable way if, I would say, the caveat is if that works for your business. Because if you're trying to sell a course that, you want to be an evergreen course, you want 2,000 people in it, you probably don't want to be sending out 2,000 e-signature documents.
Right. So I think Melanie is one of the ladies that sells high ticket items. And so all the sales are happening on the phone. So if that's the case, right, then you send them an e-doc, you take their money, and it's all fine. But if you have kind of like a Shopify or WooCommerce or something like that, then you want to make sure that you have that little ticker that says, I'm aware, this is all the things that's going to happen, I'm putting all my stuff in there, right?
Absolutely right. And you raise a really important point there, Yufa, that is, when you're implementing documents in your business, you also want the documents to match your process, your sales process. So for Melanie, I would not recommend like a click the box terms of purchase if she's doing all telephone kind of hand holding type of sales. And it's a high ticket item where there are much fewer people getting into the program, right?
Yeah.
Because an e-signature document at that point is not going to be burdensome. You could send it over like literally while you're on the phone, walk through it together, get their signature, process their payment, they're in the course, right? Or whatever, in the services. So that's a totally acceptable and very legitimate way to get acknowledgement on legal terms. But for some businesses that are all trying to automate online sales funnels, even online sales funnels into live programs, right? So there are some people that say, well, I don't sell like a digital course or program, like it's not all pre-recorded content online, but I do have an online sales funnel. And then they're in this live group where we get onto calls, or it doesn't really matter how you actually deliver the services. But even for that, an online sales funnel, like terms, click the box style, scrolling box style would be totally appropriate.
So I love where you're going with this, because it brings up a lot of other questions. What type of services, what type of products you're offering. Can we dive a little bit into live videos and what you can say and cannot say online, and what might get you liable?
Totally. So to understand the question, just meaning like when you're teaching, or just generally when you're producing live or video content?
So I've heard, so I have a lot of friends, there you go. This is how all your conversations probably start. Hey,
my
Heather,
Uncle Bob
I heard. Is that right? So I heard through the grapevine that, hi Rafi, hi Nick, everybody's joining us, fantastic. Come on to am.geek.com/live and we can actually have a conversation, because I'm sure you guys have a lot of I heard as well. So I heard that when you are on a call with a lead, not yet a client, right? Someone who's just interested, and you're providing advice. And in business, for example, I know in health you can't say I heal, I cure, I do all that stuff, because that can get you liable. And in business, they said any advice that you might give before someone signed a contract and paid you money might hold you liable, because they can say, well, she advised me and I did that, and now my business is messed up. So what are the laws? What are the fine print on that one?
Well, and it is a balancing act, right? Because so many of us who do business online produce a lot of content and give a lot of information and advice that other people can rely on. And so you have to definitely be aware of the ways that you're sharing information. And you certainly, depending on what your business is, if you're in the health or even professional services industry, right, you have to be aware of the regulations that apply to your industry, right? Yeah. So start there. Because you don't want to be saying things that would, interfere with your licensing or cause problems if you're in the health profession, or you're an acupuncturist or whatever, and you can't say certain things. So you do want to be careful and start with understanding, especially if you're in a licensed profession, understanding the regulations that apply to your licensing. And those can usually be state state specific. Sometimes there are national standards that apply, but very often with licensed professions, they're state rules. But then, as far as, because there's a lot of things to cover, right? We can say a lot of stuff online and in videos, and libel, slander type issues, right? So that falls generally under defamation, whether it's written or spoken. There's a couple defenses to defamation, and one is truth. So if you're telling the truth, that's a defense. Somebody cannot claim that you are slandering them or defaming them if it's the truth. The second defense that generally holds is opinion, right? So if it's fact or opinion, you have leeway to share that information. And so it has to be pretty clear that it's opinion. So for example, so-and-so's a jerk, right? There's no objective standard by which, that's pretty clearly opinion, right? But so-and-so is sleeping around and, ruining a whole bunch of work relationships, right?
Yeah.
Might fall in that gray zone. Part of that, right? Sleeping around, if it's not happening, right? That would be defamatory. Ruining work relationships, hard to tell where that falls, because that could be totally subjective, right? In my opinion, he's ruining work relationships.
Right, yeah.
Right? So it can get kind of tricky depending on what's being said, but essentially the measuring stick is it truth? Is it opinion, right? And is it clearly opinion? And if not, if it seems to be suggesting that there are, things happening that are being represented as fact that are not fact, and those are causing damage to the person, direct damage in some way, then it's gonna be defamatory. So, the general rule is that you've actually got quite a bit of leeway in what you say online, but you also want to be careful, because here's the rub. Is that even if what you are saying is totally legit, right? You either have the facts or you're very clearly sharing an opinion, doesn't mean that so-and-so over here that you may be talking about, or whose business you may be talking about, doesn't understand the law or hires an attorney that brings a frivolous lawsuit. That still happens, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't ensure that there's not going to be some consequence or some follow-up action. It just hopefully keeps you out of having a lawsuit, being found against you. So.
And lawsuits, so this is one of the things that you were talking about. I've heard a lot of podcasts, a lot of great information. And by the way, guys, if you want the basics of legal, right here on am.geek.com/live, you will see 5 legal basics for online entrepreneurs that you can download right now. So head over to this site, and you can also jump in and have a chat. But I've heard you talk a lot about, you don't want to go to litigation. That can be like $90,000 and up, right? You want to say the basic things that you need to protect yourself, and protect your business. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Because on one hand, yes, you want to have those contracts, but those contracts are not going to prevent you from going to litigation, because anyone can take you to court. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. But let's be clear that certain contracts, depending on how they're drafted and what the subject matter is, etc., they can prevent litigation from proceeding beyond step 1.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So even though litigation gets filed, right, let's say there's a limitation on damages, or there is a clause in the contract that, outlines where the jurisdiction is, and somebody files in their home state, right, you might be able to either close down that litigation or remove it from that state and relocate it where you're based on a properly drafted contract. So there are ways that contracts can really limit somebody's desire for litigation depending on how they're drafted.
So when I draft my contracts, everything is in Travis County in Texas. So if anything happens, you guys have to come here. right?
That's right. No, that's totally right. But you'd be shocked the number of times somebody is like, oh, I think my website documentation is fine. Like they hire me for a service contract or something. And they're like, will you quickly look at my website documents? And like I chatted with this woman in Florida and I looked and I said, well, did you know that if you had an issue go wrong in delivering your services through your online business, you would have to go litigate in California? That's what it says. And she was like, oh, really? She's like, well, I borrowed these documents from a friend. Right? I don't think that they were even read or revised. And the number of times this happens, oh my gosh, it's really phenomenal to see, because I do work with a variety of high profile people in business. The number of times that I have to track down copyright infringement scenarios, right, all around the world, I can usually trace them back to whose website the content was removed from, because they don't even change things like reference to the business name or the location, and it's just like, are you kidding me, people? Like, you're setting up your business and doing this?
I'm like, if you're stealing from someone, at least steal it without, being caught.
Out of the document.
Yeah. If you're copying and pasting, at least change the company name to your own name, at least.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So let's talk about intellectual rights and people being, hold on a second, let me read. Okay, so let's talk about intellectual right, because we're all doing business online. We're sharing our ideas. I know a lot of people who that's their way of learning, right? Like, oh, I see what this person is doing. I see what that person is doing. Russell Brunson, who I love to death, has even coined this, like this is funnel hacking, right? You basically go and you see how other people are doing their stuff and you hack it and you do, you model what they're doing. So what's the fine line between plagiarism and funnel hacking?
Yeah, so, and there is kind of a fine line. It's, you can't go duplicating proprietary information from somebody else's business, right? So, or copyright information or content that they've created, right? So the funnel hacking would get down to like, are you literally duplicating the language and the content? And right, because anybody in business ends up building their business pulling from a variety of resources, right? So it's the same in the teaching profession or any body of work that has existed for any period of time, right? We learn from the masters before us.
Right.
That said, you should not be duplicating their 10-step process for how to XYZ, right? You should not be just ripping off their language and like literally, mass producing, definitely not. But I would say even copying, small tidbits or people are doing it wrong all the time. And what is the much preferred route to creating content or, populating one of your website pages is if you're seeing things that you like out there, take notes, translate it through your brain before you even take it down.
I like that.
Right? Don't copy it so that anytime, because what gets people into trouble is like whether they're doing it electronically or, hey, I'm old fashioned. So I'm like, I have notes everywhere. It's a problem. So if you translate it first through your brain and you're writing your interpretation of something, you cannot then later, when you come back to those notes, be duplicating somebody else's content. And so some people forget, like, oh, I copied this paragraph from this whatever, right? They never provide a site. They don't figure it out. And then there ends up being duplicated content in their work.
Yeah. And there's a lot of websites that spin content and all that stuff, right? That's another challenge. So you were talking about this will get you in trouble. Let's talk about the trouble. How big is that trouble that can get you in?
Oh, it's huge. Copyright, depending on what you copy, it can be significant. So if it's a work that is subject to federal registration, right? Somebody's actually gone to the effort of obtaining a copyright registration, which whether it's an image, whether it's a web page, whether it's a video or a song or lyric, whatever, it could be anything. once somebody obtains a copyright registration, that entitles them to a whole nother layer of damages, attorney's fees, etc. Suddenly, those cases become worth pursuing, right? Wow. Yeah. So it's significant. I mean, you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars. And in one instance, like I have a friend who does infringement work exclusively, and there was a man copying from somebody else's site, like just snagging all, anytime a new photo was published, like he'd go grab the photo and use it on his website.
Wow.
And he did this like 20 or 30 times. And if you're in the online space, here's a tip for you. Put a watermark, especially if you're creating images, put a watermark or a copyright insignia right on the image. If you're doing it on a web page or any piece of content really that is you're digitally publishing, put your copyright insignia or your watermark right on that thing, because if somebody scrapes it and republishes it, you might still have access to some statutory damages that you wouldn't otherwise have without that notification.
I love that.
So, so there's a quick tip, but it can be big trouble. Like I think he ended up having to settle for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So that's another interesting part where, when is it worth pursuing that? And before we jump into this, Lauren is here. Hey, Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
Let's put you on the thingy. There we go. And you are unmuted. Let me unmute you. There we go. Hey.
Hold on. I'm going to turn this. One sec. There I am. Hi.
There we go.
So Lauren was saying,
at the Golden Gate Bridge.
I love it. You've got an amazing view there.
There you go. How are you, Heather? How you doing?
Nice to see you, Lauren.
Nice to meet you. I'm excited to collaborate with you. How is everybody today? Getting ready for the holiday?
Yes, doing great.
We are. Lauren, so you were sharing that copying contract is the worst thing that someone can do.
I just see it every single day. Yes, of course, that's when I get a phone call. People go online and they think they can go to these sites and they have no legal guidance and they copy and paste agreements. They say, oh, no, I have an agreement. It's probably one of the most problematic issues. Wouldn't you say, Heather?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, there's so many issues with contracts, so many. And that's a huge one.
Yeah, it's like pervasive.
Yeah.
And it's worse than not having one to just copy and paste something. I mean, just that choice of venue alone, it's really problematic. So I think that the advice you're giving is great, and especially maybe one of the topics that I'm sure you know a lot about is when people have these online portals and sell, do e-commerce. I think one of the big problem areas is in the compliance with that e-commerce site. There's people that specialize just in this, but I think that too many online people that are selling products online just overlook that actual site itself. The product maybe, the service maybe, but the site itself, the delivery model. Maybe you can address that a tiny bit.
And are you talking about
understand what I mean? That merchant?
Yeah, complying with the rules of the e-commerce platform.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and often people can, like, especially from an end user standpoint, you can actually see like two separate set of terms. I don't know if people have noticed this, right? So there'll be a set of terms that apply, like, to Shopify or whatever the platform is. And then there can be a set of terms that is, belonging strictly to the merchant, to the online merchant. And yes, you would have to be very careful to make sure that you're not having conflicting provisions there, right? And that you're in compliance. But yeah, probably most people don't even think to go check out what the requirements are of the platform that they're using.
Yeah, and then there's that whole Europe GDPR compliance thing with the website. I think that people, I have a colleague here in Boca who developed a whole business related to ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act compliance on websites, especially for lawyers, because it's funny that lawyers are the worst perpetrators of.
We're the worst with websites, just websites generally, totally.
Yeah. It's like the shoemakers with no shoes. We don't pay attention to our own stuff because we're so worried about our clients. But anyway, I look forward to getting to know you, and I just wanted to thank you. It's great. So, and ironically, I'm doing a podcast tonight, as Yvonne knows, and it's called The 3 Biggest Risks That Your Business Faces. And I was like, you've got to be kidding.
It
I'm like, how did that happen?
That's funny. Well, good luck.
Pleasure. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
So this is very interesting. Thank you, Lauren. It's really interesting, right? Because when you just start out, right, and you're kind of like bootstrapping at the beginning, then legal is copy and paste from other websites until I get my business running and on the ground and making sure that everything is okay, and hoping that I'm not getting sued. What are the, what's the basic, if someone just wants to start up and beginning and like, what are the basic documents that they should have in place to kind of like get basic protection and then build as they go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So this touches on a couple things. One is a framework that I teach. It's called my 5-bucket framework for basically business protection, right? And it involves what I call buckets, like categories of protection that people need to think about for their business. There's no one size fits all, right? So that's where I have to start, is there truly is no one size fits all in business. That said, and we'll step outside of the contracts bucket real quick, because the foundation element of being in business, hopefully for most people, there's a reason to and a plan for separating out your business liability from your personal assets.
Yeah.
Right? And you start that, like the only way you achieve that is by having a business structure in place, like properly setting up a business. And that means, right, filing a registration in the state where you live, like going through the formal process of setting up an LLC. And so a sole proprietorship, not adequate in the majority of scenarios, especially if you're...
Even online business? Even if you're just starting like an online business?
Especially online business.
Really?
Because your reach is so wide, and most people in the online business space are also in the world of what? Giving advice.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of risk in the world of giving advice when you're talking, especially when you're talking on topics of business, health, right? Health and nutrition, bodies, anything having to do with our bodies. There are certain categories that are higher risk, because if people follow the advice and something goes wrong, or they do it wrong, they don't do the right thing in following the advice, the impacts can be fairly significant.
Yeah.
So, right. So this is why, and this whole concept of like, well, I'm just doing this little thing online. I'm kind of in my own little bubble. Like, I'm not really impacting anybody, right? Depending on where you live, what state you're in, whether it's a community property state, whether you have a spouse, like not only might you be bringing risk into your own life, but you might be subjecting your spouse's assets to the risk in your business.
That is amazing. And it's not just your spouse, your kids, your family, your future.
Everything,
right?
your home, your savings account. That's right. Everything.
And so we were just mentioning Shopify and WooCommerce. Are you not protected like by Amazon if you're selling stuff on Amazon, or are you not protected by Shopify if you're using their platforms?
I'm not really sure. I tend to work more with information entrepreneurs than I do, for example, anybody that's selling like regular traditional products, right? Mm-hmm. That said, usually there's going to be some terms of use that you sign when you start using those platforms, right?
Yeah.
What do? Don't read those. Just click them and sign on up, right? Go ahead and slow down and pause and read those, because that's going to clarify usually risk allocation, what happens when things go wrong, etc. So that's the place to start, again, is with the actual language of the contract.
And it's so important that you say that, because most of their sites are not, their terms are not set to protect you, right? They're protect the site.
No, that's absolutely right. And because of that, so we talked about like my 5-bucket framework, mm-hmm. right? I'll quickly touch on a couple of the buckets. So we mentioned business structure, right?
Yep.
Second bucket is a bucket that I live in a lot. It's one that Lauren mentioned as well, contracts, okay? So visually speaking, this is how I line it up for people. think of a platform like a big, really solid platform that you're going to build something on, right? That's your business structure. Like you're setting the foundation of your business by actually going to the effort of creating a proper business structure, doing the proper filings, and then, honoring your corporate governance requirements, right? Annual filings, etc. Keeping proper meeting minutes, right? There's a lot in each of these buckets, by the way, but I'll keep it short.
I know.
Yeah. So that's bucket number one. Bucket two is contracts, right? And there's a lot that lives in this space, okay? Online contracts for your online business. This would include terms of use that you sign up for when you're a seller on Amazon.
Right.
Okay? That's a contract you're entering into that either supports or hurts your business. And there's a ton more, right? Your own terms and conditions on your online website, your privacy policy, all of these things are contracts. Your typical client, service agreements, etc. Bucket number three, and this becomes critical for businesses doing a variety of work online, including using third-party platforms that are not going to protect their business against risk, probably like Amazon or like Shopify or any of these others, right? They're not in the business of protecting you. So the third bucket is business insurance. Okay.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you about that because I just heard that there's something called errors and submission.
Errors and omissions. Mm-hmm.
Right? And so as someone who provides services, is that, because I know like liability and employees and I don't know, contractors if they need something, but this is like something completely new that I never heard about. So what is that about?
Yeah, so great question. Very quickly, in the world of business insurance, there's something like, 13 or 14 different business insurance policies you can have if you're in business.
Wow. So where do you start?
Right? I know. I think I've got an article on it somewhere, I should say. So what you'll want to understand, though, is that just like the rest of the landscape for your protections is really unique to your business, so is the business insurance world. Meaning that depending on what you're doing, your particular set of appropriate business insurance policies might look different than the guy next to you doing something a little bit different. Yeah. So this is where connecting with an insurance broker is going to be your best thing you can do, right? And regularly stay on top of this, like an annual review of what your insurance needs are. Errors and omissions insurance is essentially professional liability insurance.
So that means like anything that I say cannot be held against me in the court of law.
Careful, not anything, because intentional, like gross negligence, and like there are some definite things that will take you outside of coverage for insurance purposes.
Oh, wow.
So that's the other thing is insurance it's not just like this blanket thing that's always going to be there. You can violate terms of your insurance contract. That means it won't apply any longer. You don't have the protection, right? Generally, like regular negligence is covered, but not gross negligence or intentional misconduct, right? So,
and that's why you need a lawyer, because like, hey, look at the insurance and let me know if I'm okay or not.
Totally. No, that's right. So, errors and omissions insurance, though, to get back to your question, is going to relate pretty specifically to your industry, right? So there's going to be kind of standard policies for people in your industry that do a certain thing, right? That's going to look different than, in my industry.
Yeah. So we got bucket number one is the
business structure.
Bucket number two is contract. Bucket number
Right.
three is insurance.
Insurance.
Bucket number four.
Yep. Bucket number 4 is having a dispute resolution plan in place. Right?
A friend of mine once told me, she goes like, let's take a sheet of paper, put a line through it, write everything that can go well, and then write everything that can go wrong, and then make sure that you're prepared for everything that goes wrong.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And that said, I'm not a sky is falling type of person, right? Because my whole goal is that with, like we're experiencing here, little tidbits of the right information go a long way towards business protection. And what I want people to know is they don't have to filter through that themselves, right? My goal is to deliver the golden nugget so they know exactly what to do. But dispute resolution plan to me, what that means is just a little bit like we talked about with the red flag client scenario.
Yeah.
Business is a numbers game, right? And when you look at certain statistics, so first statistic is like, I think, and I'm sure that this is way smaller than actual representative numbers, but it's estimated that something like 3% of the population are basically like totally imbalanced, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, 3%, like depending on the numbers in your business, like at some point you're going to come across a person who may be able to be perceived as like a typical person for a time, and then you're going to see some pretty significant imbalance. Like I also had Monday, so Monday was a funny day, but my sister who like reads daily horoscope stuff, she was like, oh, Mercury went into retrograde again. And here I am, like, I work with people who talk about this kind of stuff in their business. I have no idea what that means, but it seems to explain like some really weird stuff happening, right? So Monday was weird. So talking about imbalanced people, I had this guy, I run this LinkedIn system where I connect with quite a few people. I mean, you and I connected on LinkedIn, right?
Yes, we did, yeah.
So I had engaged him in conversation just like I do so many other phenomenal people in business. And I'd made some referrals to him to support his business and his work and blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I got a super weird message on Monday. And I just thought, this is the numbers game of business, right? So it was one of those things. And this is what I tell people in business is you are going to have people that cross your path in business that are a red flag client for one of, numerous reasons. Maybe it's that they're just one of these people that is imbalanced or having a hard day or whatever. And maybe it's a scenario where there's legitimate concerns, right? So these can be complex scenarios, or could be a totally typical great client and something went wrong in your business systems or in the way that you delivered something or in the end result, especially if you're a creative professional, right? So there can be disputes over whatever, work quality, etc. You have to have a dispute resolution plan in place because getting back to one of the primary risks in business, right? Litigation. Yeah. Litigation can kill a small business. That video that you watched, right? Can you afford a $90,000 hit to your business this year? That's the average price of a small business contract claim if it gets filed.
That's a major thing, and we're coming up to the hour. So I want to finish the 5 buckets, and I want to make sure we're talking about legal, and legal sounds like you just said, it's 5 buckets, and each one of them is a deep, deep, deep one. It goes on forever, right? And that's why you need someone good on your side to kind of like help you navigate the waters of legal and insurance and litigations and all that stuff. And this is what you've done, right? You've put all these documents together for entrepreneurs, and tell me how that works, because you have packages where people can go to and different ways that they can get started to protect themselves.
That's right. So in an ideal world, people could get one-on-one help from a qualified attorney and have documents that are really a fit for their business, right? But what we do know about the traditional legal market is that entrepreneurs and small business owners are vastly underserved. It's a market that just does not get its legal needs met, which is why I created a secondary business, my legal website, Warrior Business, to meet the needs of people in that niche, right? And so a quick visual, you've got places like LegalZoom, right? Rocket Lawyer, I call them big box template stores over here, right? You have a big swath of space in the middle, and then you have one-on-one custom legal work over here. There's a big gap between those services and the level of support that you get, right? And so the traditional legal market has not done a great job of filling that gap. When you have to go hire an attorney one-on-one for your services, there's a really significant barrier to entry, cost. Right? You're paying somebody like a pretty significant chunk of change to even get in the door and have a conversation with that person to figure out, can they meet my needs and do I like them? Do I trust them? Right?
And when you say fill my needs, it's might be an hour, 2 hour of conversation to kind of even figure out whether or not that even works out.
That's right. And you're generally having to pay for that time.
Yeah.
And so, right. So what I believe, and my personal mission, is to break the black box legal model. It does not serve world-changing entrepreneurs and small business owners who literally are doing phenomenal work in the world and are not having their legal needs met, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a huge proponent, if you can't tell, around educating people first so that they become a savvy legal consumer.
Yeah.
They know what their needs are. They know what's available in the marketplace, right? And in this instance, I created a batch of products and templates and contracts and education to support people in a particular niche. Let's be clear that it's not every business. It's not every small business. It is information entrepreneurs and small business owners in the online space, right? So we're talking coaches, consultants, online educators, digital marketers, speakers, authors, podcasters, right? People who do very similar kinds of things with their information.
Yeah.
And so, in my online store, which people can access through my website, there are bundles tailored to different phases of business and the different types of work that people do in these businesses. So that even if they can't work one-on-one with an attorney, in that vast white space between, LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer over here and working one-on-one with an attorney over here, they have a set of documents that are pre-tailored to their industry so that at least they know, I can't make any guarantees, but that they're functional, well-drafted documents that are going to generally work for their business.
And guys, you guys can get started with a free legal. You don't know what you don't know. So right here on imthatgeek.com/live, you can download for free the 5 legal basics of the stuff that you do need to know so that you have a place to start and know, like, okay, I need to go the contract way, or I need to go the insurance way, or I need to get everything basic, the first bucket first. I'm always going to lose the first bucket, the platform first. But in order to know what you don't know, you have to start somewhere. And so Heather provided you with one document, right? It's a report that tells you exactly what are the 5 things you should look at, and then you can dive deeper and look at the other offers and be like, okay, I need this bucket or something else, right? What made you create that? Like, okay, let's get started with like the beginning. What made you create that one?
I know, it's a lot. So I've updated that report several times, but it's a lot of information because it's broken out, right? I want people to understand it, but people it's essentially what I call issue spotting. You need to know what issues to watch for in your business so that you can put the solution in place at the right time.
I love it. So you guys, if you want the report, imthatgeek.com / there you go. imthatgeek.com /live. It's right to the right of the video. Grab it, share it. Anyone that actually, starting a business, in the middle of a business, just growing a business, and they don't know what they don't know, give them that report so that can help them get on the right track. And then Heather, where can people find you?
Well, and really quick, so that people are not feeling like we left them hanging, the fifth bucket is having an IP protection plan in place, right? And again, that's going to be an individualized plan, but helping them understand what is their IP, what are the steps they need to take to protect their specific IP, bucket number 5. And then the third, because I promised people would understand the 3 biggest risks, right, that I see in online business and in the entrepreneurial world.
I have to say, I love how organized you are. This is like fantastic. Well, so when you work with Heather, she's not going to forget anything.
Well, we've covered a lot, right? Yes. So which is fine. But the third one, and this one is really hard for people not to do because it's exciting when it comes up, is they have what I call a big opportunity, right? Yeah. So they get connected, let's say, with one of the big publishers, or they have an invitation to, become a speaker on somebody's platform that they, it's like their dream to have that speaking gig. And what happens is they get presented with a contract, right? Mm-hmm. And they just, what do?
They go like, oh my God, someone's giving me an opportunity. Let me take it.
and I'll just sign it, right?
And I'll sign
and
it.
I'm not going to read it, or even if they do read it and they see some issues like, I don't know what that means, or I'm not sure how this impacts me, they don't have it reviewed by an attorney.
Yeah.
And they just sign on the dotted line, and that's the end of it. And the reasons that, and as exciting as those big opportunities are, I'm just going to say, because they are the big opportunities, slow down, take a breath, get the help that you need in having somebody review your document. I've worked, like, based here in Seattle, right? I've worked with consultants and educators and people who take their entire, like, lifetime body of work into Microsoft or Starbucks or whatever, and they're providing, like, executive level coaching. And
you're fine.
You're okay. No worries. And Microsoft or Starbucks, right? They hand over their standard contract, and what does it allow them to do? Just take the person's IP, take the course or the program that they're offering, to their executives in their training, and duplicate it or use it again or reteach it to other people in the company. Right? So don't sign on the dotted line, even for those really big opportunities, until you've had an attorney on your side look at it.
Right. And if anyone needs any proof behind that, this is the record label companies, right? This is why people started doing their own YouTube and, like, self-publishing and all that stuff, because when you go with the big guys, what do we say? The house always wins, right?
Totally. That's exactly right. And they just think, well, I'm the big fish. I get to be in business this way. I get to take stuff, and I get to, define the rules. Yeah.
And so it's very easy for us when we just start out not to value what we offer. And I know it happened to me when someone came to me and goes like, oh my God, I'll pay you $1,000 to teach me what you know. And I'm like, oh my God, someone will pay me for it. Sure. And right. And then I watch him take it and turn it into 15,000, and then, the rest. So you know a lot. You probably know a lot than you think you do. And the challenge is when you give it away for free, then you're really hurting yourself. You're hurting your IP, and you're hurting your own voice. You can't, you won't be able to feed your family eventually, right? The bottom line, you will not be sleeping at night. You won't be feeding your family. And even if you do...
Serious.
That's it. You're going to die poor and miserable. So get out.
I'll talk to you later. Yeah.
But really, guys, when you start a business, it's your baby. And you need to protect your baby at least until they grow up and you can sell them. That is such a bad metaphor. But sell your baby. But when you start, really make sure that you have the protection in place just in case you need to go to litigation. You are at least having your own bases covered. And if you don't know what you don't know, if you don't know where to start, then grab the 5 basic, I'm going to mess it up, 5 legal basics for online entrepreneur report. And that at least will give you a head start of what you need to look for and how to protect yourself. So let's just finish with, like, 2 things. One, what is the basic, like, if someone starts a business now and they're starting to budget, what's an average budget that they should put aside just to get those basics covered? And then, if they need more, they can get more.
Yeah, great question. So understand that there's going to be some upfront costs with business structure, right? And that depends. Like, are you using LegalZoom? Are you hiring an attorney one-on-one to do that, right?
Yeah.
You probably know my recommendation. But just understand what you're getting with each level of service, and just understand that that's a sunk cost. You're going to put that in, and it's going to then be there. You'll have some annual filing and some other, like, ongoing expenses just related to the preparation of those documents, but not cost prohibitive. Let's put it that way. It's not cost prohibitive. And the initial creation, like, depending on, again, where you're going for your services, might be between $500 or $1,500 for your initial, let's call it small business setup. If you're a corporation with lots of levels of investors and you're doing, like, some more complex stuff, it's going to be a bigger investment for you. Then the next thing you should tackle is outside of business structure, contracts. that could be, depending on like whether you're getting templates online from a big box store, right? Relatively inexpensive, not a high level of education or service that goes along with it.
Right.
Right? So you just have to understand what you're choosing versus like one of the bundles or packages I've created that the goal is that you get a certain level of support, you get some education that goes along with using these things the right way. Versus one-on-one support, which obviously is going to be a more premium price point, right? Yeah. One-on-one customized documents, high-level support with all of your legal work. So really depends on your business trajectory, depends on your own business budget, because I would probably make different recommendations to different businesses depending on their goals and their budget. And
so in order to chat with you and connect with you, where do they find you? And and how can they get support? Absolutely. So you can always find me online via my website, legalwebsitewarrior.com. So no the at the beginning, just legalwebsitewarrior.com. And then as far as social media, the best place, and I shout from the rooftops about this because it's been so fun for me, but my best place to spend any time online is LinkedIn. I know, it's kind of interesting, right? How LinkedIn is all of a sudden becoming the place. Yeah, it's really a place with like some interesting, what I call business builders, people who are building some pretty legitimate businesses, right? They spend a lot of, not a lot, but when they're online and social media, they're spending their time on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn for Heather Pearce Campbell. Yeah, Heather Pearce Campbell, my full name, yep. And legalwebsitewarrior.com. To get all of your information and education. And if you want a free report, imthatgeek.com/live. We'd love to support you, hear you. Thank you, Lauren, for joining in. And thank you, Melanie, and everyone who jumped in. That was fantastic. Any last words, Heather? Just thank you. It's been so fun to connect with you. I know, face to face. It's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again for joining us. And we'll see you guys in the next episode of I'mThatGeek.com. Excellent. Okay, bye, Yifat.